the C.U.N.T from Gen Thalz, the cut up noise thingy, a harsh noise synthesizer. In this video, we're going to go over how it works, and we're going to test it out with a few different instruments because this thing is a beast. It is made by Gen Thalz, who makes all sorts of amazing synths. This thing has 6 knobs, 6 buttons, 4 switches, and an input. So it functions like a pedal too, but we're going to go over how it works. First, we got the power switch. I'm going to get into the other switches eventually. Seems like I'm going to explain these out of order, but they make sense. So the power switch is right there. We have our volume and our distortion. Next up, I'm going to go over the meat of this thing. So here we have this button linked to this knob. This knob here is the low frequency oscillator. This knob and this button are a square wave oscillator. This knob and this button are a noise generator. This knob and this button is a feedback oscillator. Did you get all that? That's this one, this one, this one, and this one. But then what does that one and that one do? This one activates the input. This one turns it all off. This is the kill switch. This controls which, well, let's go, before we even get into the rest of the switches, let's just test all that out. So you heard the low frequency oscillator changing it, and I can change the rate of the LFO with this knob. And this kind of activates it, although it's sometimes you can hear it present in the background without hitting this button. Depending on the setting. Next up, the square wave oscillator. Okay, then we've got the noise generator. And then the feedback oscillator. Input and kill switch. Not doing anything because I don't have any input in right now. We'll show that in a second. Kill switch. Works exactly like you think it does. So in combination, these buttons activate these different parts and they work in conjunction with each other. But let's go over the switches now because they tie into how some of this works. This switch here is connected to the LFO. And this switch determines whether the LFO is targeting. This switch determines whether this LFO is targeting this oscillator or this oscillator. In this position, it's targeting this oscillator. In this position, it's targeting this oscillator. Let's hear how that sounds. See what I mean? Okay. Next up, this switch is LFO range. So two different ranges for your LFO, either like a slower rate or a faster set of rates with a little bit of overlap. Next, your last switch is for the square wave oscillator. It has 3 different modes. It has a 3 toggle switch. On the bottom is a low tone. Top is a high tone. Middle is no tone, but when you mess with it, it makes noise. Pretty cool. That's all the features. But there's so much that you can do with combining everything. We're going to bring in an input now. This input is going to be our friend, the death metal distortion, and the angel tongue shaker box. And we're not going to hear any of this until we push the input button. Okay, so now that we have an input, we can really start messing around with what the sound, what this thing does, and treat it more like a pedal to our input, even though it generates its own sounds and it has its own internal oscillators. It can still do so much mixing these signals, especially with the feedback and distortion, with your input held at the same time. Let's test it out. And let's test out the distortion on the C.U.N.T itself. Let's try it without the death metal. Let's bring it back. Now, something I've noticed, and something that Gen Thalz mentioned to me when I bought this unit, is that the distortion knob does not work. It does not work best at max. It works best close to max. Same kinda with the volume knob. The volume knob you can turn all the way up to max, but the distortion knob, it like sounds bad and weird at like low and max. So you kind of got to keep it like just underneath. I'll show you that. Not necessarily bad and weird. I mean, it's all noise, you know what I mean. So that's kind of how it all works. But I want to get into a little bit more information about this. A little more, some tips and tricks. Specifically, this is a relatively popular noise synth, but it can be used for a lot more than just cut up noise. It spits out cut up noise like no one's business. I mean, like, you've seen it. It's nonsense. But what if I wanted to make like evolving noise wall? Is it good for that? The answer is yes. The secret is tape. Get a little piece of tape. Tape down your input. Tape down your feedback. You can use tape to tape down any of the functions that you want. I often find myself taping down the input because I'll be running a different instrument through this. Like, I'll run a synthesizer through it. Let's run a synthesizer through it. I think that's a great idea. This is a Cybergrunge synthesizer from SeeleOfficial, cybergrunge.net. And we don't hear anything yet because the cunt is not on. So you can see how taping down the input can allow you to perform with another instrument without having to worry about, you know, your instrument not doing anything. Or having to hold it down like it's an extra finger. Several extra fingers if you need it to be. I like using masking tape because you can mark it up and it doesn't leave marks on the synthesizer. You can also, let's see, Gen Thalz makes also a few other instruments that are all worth checking out. It's just genthalz.com, GENTHALZ.com. And these run around, I think 250 new? Yeah, from Gen. Don't quote me on that. Gen might have changed their prices. But it's a fantastic synth. Can't recommend it enough. And I hope this video gave you a little more insight into how it works, what it can do, and how it sounds. Thank you. Don't forget to like and also subscribe. Yeah.